As they pulled up to Della's house, Della felt a little sadness. Her world was changing so fast and she was getting nervous more and more every day. She thought that perhaps the two of them should forget about everything for a short time. It was good that tomorrow was work. As they went into the kitchen, Della offered Perry a lemonade. He took it with a smile and they went out to sit on the patio. The weather had been wonderful that day and they both needed to wind down. As they took their seats at the table, Della sat back and relaxed. It was the first time in 2 days that she had actually had the time to just sit down, and she wanted to enjoy the time. Perry also sat back and watched a bird feeding its babies. It was a warm spring day and the days were going to be getting warmer. The two of them sat there in the kind of silence that two people who were in love could enjoy. It was a comfortable quiet and they just sat there for about 15 minutes, taking in the free time that they had for now. They knew that the time would once again be shattered and that they needed to relish this time that they had together. Della found herself falling into a daydream. She was tired and wanted her life to stop being so complicated, but then she knew it would be too boring then. I had just better enjoy this time. We don't have this kind of peace and quiet for long, she thought to herself. Della had not seen Perry looking at her. "A penny for your thoughts," he told her. "I actually have nothing in my mind right now. This is a very short period in our life and I was enjoying the peace and quiet for just a minute. Oh, I would never want to have a quiet life for long, but I know that there is so much that has to be done and I don't know if I have the energy. Those houses, they are so nice." What house? Perry was thinking the same thing that Della was. Even though they were not touching, their thoughts were the same. "I don't know. All of the homes were wonderful. Let's talk." Della nodded and said, "I am going to get another lemonade first," and with that she took Perry's glass and headed into the kitchen. She did not hear Perry come in and jumped just a little when she felt his hand on her shoulder. "I know that there is a lot for us to do, but we will get everything done. Why don't we just relax and watch some television tonight? We can forget about our wedding for a couple of hours. I would like to sit on the couch with you and just enjoy the quiet of the night," and with that he kissed her softly on the neck. Perry always knew what to say. No matter what happened, he could make her feel better. She turned towards him, and they held each other in a passionate kiss. After a few moments, Della told him that it was time to make some supper. Della had hoped that they would end up back at her house and she had taken out a couple of steaks. Perry smiled and told her, "I will start the grill." As they cooked the dinner together, Della again knew that she had found the right man for her. They did not have to speak to each other, they just knew what to do. Within the hour they had steak, baked potatoes and a fresh salad all made. They had gone out to the patio to have their supper. Dinner was done just in time for them to turn on one of their favorite shows. It was a comedy and sometimes they felt that they needed something to laugh about. In their line of work there was so much sadness, it was nice to think that people someplace were having a bunch of fun, not a bunch of sorrow. But as they cuddled on the couch, Della thought of how soon they would be man and wife and that soon they would be sitting in their own house. Whichever house it was, and she longed for the day that Perry would not have to leave for his own home. She wanted him to stay with her now, but they were not married. So she cuddled up even closer to him. Perry looked down at Della and could see a hint of sadness on her face. He did not want her to be sad. This was supposed to be the happiest time of her life. "Is everything all right?" he asked her. Della had not realized that her face had been in a grimace. "I am sorry, I went back to thinking about everything that is left for us to do," and with that she just put her head on his shoulder and went back to smiling. The news was coming on and Della did not want the night to end. She reached over and took both of Perry's hands and said, "I love you." Whatever happens, I know we will be happy with our new home and our new life. I am sorry that I have been so preoccupied, and with that she reached to kiss him. The kiss was very passionate, and before much time had gone by they were making out extremely heavy. The passion was in the highest of the high when it was broken by a knock on the door of all things. Della and Perry did their best to act like they were doing nothing, and somehow Della found her voice. "Who is it?" she called. "It's Paul. Sorry to come so late, but I need to talk to Perry right away." Della and Perry straightened themselves out the best they could, but what a mess. The cushions on the couch were almost off of the couch, and Della could not find one of her earrings. Perry straightened out his shirt and they turned on the lights. Perry opened the door and Paul knew that he should have waited until morning. Perry was a mess and his shirt was buttoned wrong. When he looked over at Della, she was a little bit of a mess herself. Paul knew that he needed to talk to both of them, so he decided to ignore what they looked like. "Perry, I am in trouble, real trouble. One of my men were following a man who was cheating on his wife. Well, it turned out that he was doing more than that. He was selling stolen goods on one of the online sites. At some point his partner was murdered. I am not sure when, but I would guess about an hour before my man found him. But the man we were following found him first and he freaked out. He grabbed my man and managed to get his gun away. He knew that he was being followed and he turned around on my man. While he was arguing with my man, someone called the police, and instead of shooting my man he shot the police officer. I know my man did nothing. But by the time another officer got there, the man had dropped the gun and was yelling, 'Help, this man killed my friend,' and had a gun to me. When the cops came he shot the cop. The police are out for blood, Perry on this one," he told him. "My man's name is George Streeter and he is a good man. He would never murder anyone. I know that he told me the truth. He was following a man named Charlie Bowers, and the policeman that was killed name is Dwayne Carter. He is being held in jail right now and he needs a lawyer." Paul told them. "All right, let me freshen up a little and we will be on our way." Perry told him. "Call me as soon as you know anything, Perry." Paul told him. "I will, and I will see you in the morning," and with that Perry and Paul left. Della sat down on the couch and straightened one of the pillows. She was genuinely worried about Paul's man. She had met George before and knew him and his wife Karen and knew that he had a couple of children. But she was embarrassed by what Paul had seen. Perry and her were in the middle of something very private when Paul had come in. She could not wait until they married. Perry went right to the jail to help Paul's man out. He had been embarrassed by what Paul had seen but knew that his friend would never be judgmental towards him. But he was sorry for Della. He loved her with all of his heart and did not want her embarrassed like that. He could not wait until they had married. He might have done something that night if it had not been for Paul's knock. He and Della needed to be careful about their emotions. As Perry walked the familiar halls of the police station, he was met by Lt. Trag. "Perry, we have your client." With his fingerprints all over the gun and the man shot minutes before the other police officers arrived on the scene. He was following a man named Charles Bowers who has no record at all. In fact, he is a very clean person. His friend Gordon Tuttle was murdered, of that we are sure. We are working on that crime, but your client could have murdered him also. He had plenty of time to commit that murder also. Charles claims that is why your client killed him. He came upon the murder and he was afraid that your client was going to kill him too. He managed to get the gun away from George, but it was too late for poor Dwayne, our officer. He was dead when the other officers arrived on the scene. Perry walked into the room where they were holding George and walked in as one of the officers was yelling at his client. When he saw Perry, he shut right up and glared at him but walked out of the door. Perry could see that George was alright, just worried. "You need to tell me exactly what happened once again," he told him. George looked Perry right in the eye and told him I had been following Charles Bowers for the last 3 days. When he had gotten a call from his friend Gordon Tuttle. When we arrived at the man's house, we found the door open and found Tuttle dead on the floor. He had been hit over the head by something. Perhaps I touched it? I don't know. How did he get the gun away from you? Perry asked him. He caught me by surprise. I did not know that he had seen me come up behind me and he grabbed me. He is very strong and had the gun pointed at me when the police officer came. The cop told him to put the gun down. And he shot him. Then he laughed and said that I was going to go to jail for the rest of my life as the murderer of a cop. He put the gun down and yelled to the police that arrived next. George told him, "What you have said makes sense. But I need to find out who murdered Gordon Tuttle. From there I can show that you did not shoot the police, that it was Charlie Bowers. You are going to have to stay here for the night, but Della and I will get you out on bail tomorrow. I promise, take it easy." And with that Perry opened the door so that Lt. Tragg could question the man. He stayed through the interrogation and left the jail after 2 am. that night.